It's time to talk all things offensive guards as it relates to the Buffalo Bills and the 2022 NFL Draft. Today, I'm Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Monday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, or if you're joining us on the YouTube channel, your first watch every day. We're going to talk offensive guards today on the podcast, and we've done this for running backs, wide receivers, cornerbacks, and now guards. And I wanted to do deep dives on these positions in particular because I think they're the biggest positions of need that the Bills need to prioritize early in the 2022 NFL Draft. So just like we did for those other positions, we will talk about the need that exists on the roster. I'll give you my first round targets, my second round targets, my third round targets, and a few day three guys that I really like. We'll go over the size, the athleticism, and then a mini scouting report, and I'll give you a pro comparison for every single player. Again, when I give you comparisons, they're not career arcs. They are stylistic. It means that the players look the same to me. They have the same physical traits, and they win in the same ways. So just keep that in mind. Let's start by identifying the need here. I think this is very straightforward. The Bills have Roger Saffold, and they have Ryan Bates as the starting guards. Now, Ryan Bates is signed for the next 4 years. Roger Saffold, a one-year thing. And beyond the 2022 season, the only guard under contract is Ryan Bates. So you need a starter that you can plug into this lineup in 2023, and I think it'd be great for the Bills to get ahead of that. Oh, by the way, Roger Saffold's had some injuries lately. Now, he hasn't missed a lot of games, but he didn't finish a lot of games last year with the Titans with that shoulder injury. And so I want to make sure that there is a contingency plan on the roster. So to me, the need is very, very straightforward. And I think the Bills should use a pick in the first, second, third round, fourth at the latest, to find themselves a developmental starter. And the good news is, got a lot of really good options to consider. So let's dig into those players. We'll start with my first round options. And again, I said this every time, but it's important for me to mention, these rankings will not match up with what you see on the draftnetwork.com for me, because scouting in a vacuum, which is what I do for the Draft Network, compared to scouting for a team and through the lens of a team and what they prefer and the schemes and the types of people that they want to bring into the building, it's a different list. So just want to keep that in mind. So my number one guard for the Bills is Zion Johnson out of Boston College. And let me say one more thing. I know we have a lot of housekeeping to get to, but I heard from you guys, right? I get a lot of good feedback from listeners. And you guys said that you wanted to hear a lot more about the non-first round options. So I have a pretty robust day two crop of players that we'll get into, and you'll get to learn about some new names today, hopefully. But let's start with the top of the class, Zion Johnson, Boston College. 6'2" and 5/8, 312 pounds, 34-inch arms, 10 and 5/8 in the hands. Great size, right? He's also an exceptional athlete, a terrific athlete. There's a lot that I love about Zion Johnson. In fact, it's very difficult to poke holes in his game and in his overall package as a player because he's got size, he's got athleticism, and he has very, very consistent tape. The technique is outstanding in terms of both hands and feet and leverage and body control. He's very balanced. He's assignment driven. And he's got a great story. Super smart. He went to Davidson, which is a non-scholarship football program that's actually right up the road here from where I'm at in Concord, North Carolina. It's out there in Davidson. And then he transfers to Boston College, quickly becomes a starter for them, and locks down a role for the next 3 seasons on a really good offensive line. So you love that he's kind of earned his way, and he's got a lot of skill, a lot of traits, a lot of stuff you're looking for. And coming from that Boston College program and their head coach, Jeff Hafley, he's phenomenal. He's a rising star in the coaching world, in my opinion. They run an NFL offense. And so when we talk about the transition for offensive linemen coming out of the college ranks, and it's so different compared to what they're asked to do in the NFL, not for Zion Johnson. He's doing the same stuff he's going to be asked to do in the league in college. Vertical pass sets, rolling his hips into contact. It's all there. The minor gripe that I have with Zion Johnson is I think he can be a little bit too quick to shoot his hands. That's it. And I thought that showed up a lot more in his one season at left tackle compared to what we saw from him at guard. He even played some center at the Senior Bowl. This guy's versatile. Outstanding prospect. And my player comp for him, and you can believe me or not, one thing I'll tell you, I'm a lot of things, but one thing I'm not is a liar. My comp for him, and I came up with this comp back in like November, December. My comp for Zion Johnson is Roger Saffold. So you talk about a very smooth transition if you were to bring in Zion Johnson with your first-round pick. Let's move on to Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. 6'3" 7/8", 323 pounds, 34 1/8 inch arms, 10 3/8 in the hand size. He's got great size. In terms of athleticism, he's average to below average. This isn't a athlete that's comparable to a Zion Johnson. You give up something when it comes to the movement skills comparing Zion Johnson to Kenyon Green. That's a big reason why Zion Johnson is firmly my number one guard. What do I like about Kenyon Green? Power, versatility. This guy is a people mover. He creates displacement in the run game. He's got a firm anchor, and he's played like every spot up front except for center. Has good tape at tackle, good tape at guard. I like him best at guard because I don't love his lateral mobility and overall movement skills, and a lot of that's covered up playing guard as opposed to on an island at tackle. My knocks on Kenyon Green is change of direction skill and overall quickness. He's just not as explosive as you get from a Zion Johnson or a lot of the other players we'll get to. My pro comparison for Kenyon Green, Elgden Jenkins, who's a really outstanding offensive lineman for the Green Bay Packers. Next up is a personal favorite of mine. Really like this player, Tyler Smith, Tulsa. You guys have heard me talk about him more than a few times here on this podcast. 6'4" 3/8", 324 pounds, 34 inch arms, 10 3/4 in the hands. So phenomenal size. He's an exceptional athlete, an above average athlete all the way. And the mini scouting report on him is very simple. He's the most tenacious blocker I've ever seen. This dude gets after people. He wants to put everybody on their back. And he is powerful. You're not going through him, and he's going to uproot defensive linemen out of the run fits in the run game. He is a mauler, road grader, nasty. All those adjectives, Tyler Smith earns every one of those labels. I love that he's young. He's only 20 years old, a redshirt sophomore, and he has exciting physical traits. So you love his temperament, you love his size, you love his athleticism. Now, the concern with Tyler Smith is that his technique needs overhauled. And he's pretty new to playing offensive line, so that's not to be unexpected. But handwork, footwork, body control, major work in process. And so he'd be a wonderful pick in my mind to kind of redshirt for a season, and then I think you have an impact starter in 2023 at guard. My pro comp for Tyler Smith is Kalichi Osemele. I think that should paint a pretty good picture for you. The last first-round option, and I don't think that this player is a realistic option for the Bills, That's Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa. I think he's a center only. I don't see him playing guard. And he's got very bad size. 6'2 and an eighth, 296, 31 and an eighth in the arm length, 10-inch hands. He's an excellent athlete, no concerns there. And I love his tape. Like, he's got elite tape. He's a technician. He's got good temperament. Gets after people. He's got good range. Nobody really beats him in pass protection. He's an outstanding football player. There's no question about that. The concern is the size. There's not a lot of successful offensive linemen that are built like Tyler Linderbaum. He's in the 6th percentile for height, the 5th percentile for weight, and the 1st percentile for arm length and wingspan. If he's a successful NFL player, he will be an outlier, and I don't believe in drafting people because you think they're the exception. I love Linderbaum as a player. I think the Bills will love Linderbaum as a player. Iowa, they love that. He's a wrestler, converted defensive lineman. He's got all the stuff the Bills typically like in a prospect, but my goodness, he's tiny. And I think he bulked up to 296. And so there are just going to be matchups in the NFL where he is overwhelmed. My comp for him is Jason Kelce from the Philadelphia Eagles. That's the path, right? To me, it's a similar scheme and situation like Jason Kelce has had in Philadelphia that's going to open up the opportunity for Tyler Linderbaum to have a great NFL career. Let's move on to my second round options. And I'll be honest with you, I've only got one player here. And a lot of my third round options that I'll get to, and I have a robust list of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 third round options. Some of them I'd be pretty satisfied with in the second round, or like a trade up, right? Like the Bills might not be able to get these players at 89, but if they move up into the 70s or something like that, it'd be a good decision for me. But I want to focus a little bit on my top second round player. This is one of my favorite players in the draft. I'd love for the Bills to get their hands on this guy. It's Dylan Parham from Memphis. Really good football player. 6'2 and 5/8, 311 pounds, 33 and an eighth inch arms, 10 and a quarter inch hands. So good size for a guard. He's an exceptional athlete, above average athlete all the way around. I love his story. So in high school, he was a tight end and a linebacker. And he was also on the track team and the basketball team in addition to football in high school. And a lot of times when you talk about, football players that also participate in track that are tight ends and linebackers, it's because they throw shot put or discus. No, not Dylan Parham. He was a sprinter and a jumper. So that should give you some indications on the type of athlete that this guy is. And at Memphis, he's played every position. He's played tackle, guard, and center. His last season was at right guard, and that's where I like him the best. He's a balanced football player, powerful. He's a technician. He creates displacement in the run game. He gets after people. He's rock solid in pass protection. Really good player. The concern with Dylan Parham is just keeping weight on. I don't think he's naturally 311 pounds. I think he's a player that really has to work hard to keep the weight on. I bet you he plays closer to 305. So that's just something to keep in mind with him. But my goodness, he's a good football player. My pro comp for him is Shaq Mason, and that should paint a really good picture. I think he's a stud. Moving on to the third round options. Sean Ryan out of UCLA, 6'4 and 5/8, 321 pounds, 32 and 3/8 in the arm length, 11 and an eighth inch hands. My goodness, that guy's got big hands. In terms of athleticism, he's a good athlete, maybe slightly above average. Powerful run blocker. He sustains blocks extremely well. I love that about him. He stays under control. He sits on his hips and sustains blocks. Good pop in his hands. Very, very powerful hands. And once he's got the clamp set on you, you're not moving. So I like that about him. And I thought he had really good tape, especially against the top players in the Pac-12, mainly Kayvon Thibodeau, the big-time pass rusher out of Oregon. I watched both of those games the last 2 years, and I think Sean Ryan did as well against Kayvon Thibodeau as any player. Now, the concern with Sean Ryan is length. He's only got 32 and 3/8 inch arms, and he played tackle in college. And so some of those length concerns will be mitigated by moving to the inside. But winning with first contact and those types of things can be a little bit of a challenge for him. And the action happens quicker on the inside. So he'll have a bit of a transition kicking inside to guard. Good football player. Next player on the list is Ed Ingram out of LSU. 6'3 and a quarter, 307 pounds, 33 and 5/8 in the arm length, 10-inch hands. I think he's an average athlete, maybe slightly below average. Mini scouting report on him is he's a powerful run blocker and he's got a firm anchor. He's going to move bodies in the run game, and you're not going to go through him as a pass rusher. I think he's got decent range. He's incredibly smart. I work with Keith Sanchez over at thedraftnetwork.com. He's one of our full-time members of the scouting staff, and we got him from LSU, where he was the director of personnel for multiple seasons. And so he knows Ed Ingram very, very well, and he spoke very highly of his football character and work ethic and just how smart he is on the field. I think he's a really good pass blocker as well. Now, the concerns with Ed is that he sat out all of 2018 due to some off-the-field stuff, and I don't know much about that, but that's something to look into. And I think there's some stiffness to him. I also was pretty disappointed with him at the Senior Bowl. I thought his game tape at LSU was a lot better than the player we watched at the Senior Bowl. And in fact, I was talking to an NFL offensive line coach at the Combine, and no, it wasn't Aaron Cromer. I did get to spend some good time with Aaron Cromer, but this is a different NFL offensive line coach that I have a relationship with, and he's one of the best in the league. And he was talking to me about Ed Ingram, and he said, look, I thought I was getting bamboozled because that Ed Ingram at the Senior Bowl wasn't the same guy I watched at LSU. But you go back to the game tape, and he's a really good football player. My comp for Ed Ingram is Trey Turner. Let's move on to another one of my favorite players in the draft, Cole Strange out of Chattanooga. He's a stud. 6'4 and 7/8, 307 pounds, 33-inch arms, 10 and an 1/8 inch hands. He's an elite caliber athlete. Elite. Mini scouting report on him, 44-game starter. He's got great range. You want to get this guy going on longer pulls, out in space. He can do it at a high level. Great lateral mobility. He's got good power. He gets after people, good block temperament. All those things are really, really good. He dominated Kentucky. So you talk about a guy coming out of Chattanooga. You have questions about level of competition. Watch this guy play against Kentucky. He was terrific. And he's one of those rugged dudes. You know, he has no gloves, nothing like that, just regular uniform, no gloves, no wristbands, nothing. And he wears the split face mask. Like, you remember Thurman Thomas and that face mask? This guy's wearing it now. You don't see that face mask anymore. He's a rugged old school football player, but he's got good mobility. My concern with Cole Strange is handwork. I think he's got to get a little bit more consistent with allowing his hands to work independently and firm up his edges. There are times where some rushers can get to his edges and he allows them to get through. He allows that angle to get softened. And so I'm looking for a little bit more stiffness in that hand placement and keeping those feet engaged when he's in pass pro. Sometimes when guys get to his edges, it doesn't end well for him. He's also going to be a 24-year-old rookie, so that's something to be mindful of. My pro comp for him, Joe Tooney. Again, I'm not going to predict the same type of career, but body composition and the way they win is very similar to me. Next player, another one I really like, Luke Godecki from Central Michigan. 6'5", 312, 32 and a quarter inch arms, 9 3/4 in the hand size. Excellent athlete. Mini scouting report, he's new to the position. He's a converted tight end. So there's a lot of time on task that's missing that gives you the idea that he can get better. But for a guy that's new to the position, I thought his technique was really good. I really appreciated his control, how he's willing to sit on his hips, play with hand leverage, move people, but do it in a way where he can sustain blocks and stay under control. I think that's hard for a lot of players. And Godecki really showcases that ability. Love the lateral mobility. I like his temperament as a player. Should be a really solid starter in my mind in year 2. The concerns with Godecki is length, and then he played offensive tackle in college, and so he's got a bit of a transition to the inside at the next level. My pro comp for him, Mark Glowinski. Let's move on to Jamari Salyer out of Georgia. Not entirely convinced he's a scheme fit, but he's a player that I like, so I want to talk about him. 6'3", 321 pounds, 33 and 5/8 inch arms, 10-inch hands. He's an okay athlete, maybe below average. What I like about him, he's played all 5 spots on the offensive line. He's got heavy hands, physical run blocker, firm anchor. You're not going through him. He's a power player. He's probably a better projection to a team that's a gap blocking run scheme. And I think the Bills are going to run a lot more zone, and Salyer might not have the range to do that well. My concerns with Salyer, he's high cut, so he's got high hips, and that creates some issues with leverage and playing with good bend. And then his feet can be heavy, right? This is not an explosive mover. And so that's something that maybe he can drop some weight and add some athleticism. He absolutely held his own at left tackle in the SEC, but the NFL is a different world. My pro comp for him, Ben Grubbs. Last player I want to get to, another one of my favorites in this class, Zach Tom out of Wake Forest. 6'4" and a quarter, 304 pounds, 33 and a quarter inch arms, 10 and 3/8 inch hands. Exceptional athlete. Really tested extremely well, and it shows up on tape. 34-game starter for Wake Forest, mostly at left tackle and center. Really rock-solid player. He's a guy that you watch, and he's not overly exciting, I'll tell you that, but you just watch rep after rep after rep, and you see consistency. You see a guy that's committed with playing with good bend and leverage, control and technique. He's got good range, and he just doesn't get beat. And so it's not like he's overwhelming people, but nobody's beating him. And he's versatile. He can play up and down the line of scrimmage, and he's a great athlete. Love that about him. Great range overall. The concern with Zach Tom is you just wish he had a little bit more nasty to him, a little bit more power. But I think you get this guy in the weight room, and you have a very versatile player that I think has starter upside, and at a minimum gives you flexibility to be a reserve at all 5 spots. And my comp for him, and just like I started off with talking about Zion Johnson, and I comped him to Roger Saffold, Zach Tom, my comp for him is Ryan Bates. And that's not a comp that I came up with today. I came up with that comp back in January, I think, is when I wrote him up and did the evaluation. So a couple of very clean projections in my mind when you consider Zach Tom is very similar to Ryan Bates, and Zion Johnson is very similar to Roger Saffold, who are the Bills' starting guard combination. Let's touch quickly on a couple of day 3 players that I like. Just some shout outs, not going to go too deep into these players, but as you consider guys on day 3 that I think are appealing to me at guard, Cordrell Volson out of North Dakota State University, played right tackle for them. He projects best to guard at the next level in my mind, although he's kind of tall and doesn't play with great bend. I don't trust him at tackle. Physical temperament, liked him a lot at the Shrine Bowl. That's where I really kind of appreciated his game more. And, he's a mauler and all that type of stuff, but he's going to have to transition inside. He's got a little bit of heaviness to his feet, got to play with better bend, but I like his temperament. I like his size, and I think he's got developmental starter appeal. Lasitis Smith from Virginia Tech came to Virginia Tech to play tight end, and he transferred over. Well, he didn't transfer. He transitioned over to guard, I think in 2018, and became a really good starter for the Hokies. He's got good range. He pulls and is very effective. I like his lateral mobility. I like his anchor. He just kind of has some length issues, and he's a little bit tight. So a couple things to be mindful of there. I do think he has developmental starter appeal, especially in his zone scheme. Cade Mays out of Tennessee, 5-star recruit, went to Georgia, finished his career at Tennessee. He's played all 5 spots. I know he's played right tackle, right guard, and center. And I'm pretty sure he's played both left guard and left tackle. So you love the positional flexibility there. Physical dude. He's got heavy hands. And I think he's got really nice appeal as a run blocker. And then if he just gets a little bit more controlled, I think he could be a really effective pass blocker. Logan Bruss from Wisconsin, solid player. Think he can at least be a serviceable backup, can develop into a starter, plays with good control and range. And then Josh Ezeudu from North Carolina. He's been their best offensive lineman for like the last couple of seasons, has played multiple spots, good temperament in the run game, really solid pass blocker, and they pass the ball a ton with Sam Howell. So a big reason why, Javonte Williams and Michael Carter had such great careers. Ty Chandler was so good for them. Why Sam Howell has been able to be really effective is because Josh Ezeudu has stabilized that offensive line. And I think as a midday 3 type player, he has a lot of appeal to at least be a quality reserve. So there you have it. A bunch of names for you at guard that the Bills should target. Would love to come away with one of those players, especially that I mentioned for second round, third round. Those Dylan Parham, Sean Ryan, Ed Ingram, Cole Strange, Luke Godecki, Zach Tom, Jamari Sawyer. Would love for the Bills to get one of those players to start grooming as a starter for 2023. And then, look, if you don't have a receiver you like in the first round, you don't have a corner you like in the first round, and you can pick a Zion Johnson or a Tyler Smith or a Kenyon Green, turn in the card. Turn in the card. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Tomorrow's Herd Mentality, so don't miss it. Make sure you're subscribed. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.